Hello, welcome to the Animal Justice Academy. My name's Dave Meslin. I'm so excited and honored to be a part of this amazing program. I can't believe how many people have signed up for it. It's fantastic because it's not enough to care about an issue. You have to get involved. You have to make your voice heard. And there's certain skills you need to do that. So it's so fantastic that you're all here as part of this. And this module is about how we can fix democracy to make it work better for everyone. And this totally impacts the whole field of advocacy and activism. Because if our democracy isn't functioning properly, that means that voices aren't being heard. Certain voices aren't being heard, and other voices are being heard. And in so many ways, our democracy is designed to kind of perpetuate the status quo and to make sure that new voices aren't heard, that smaller groups aren't heard, that smaller parties either can't form or can't earn the seats that they deserve. And we often end up with parties who literally are ruling against the will of the majority, which is so crazy and only happens in a few countries in the world that use this really stupid voting system called first past the post. It's actually incredibly obscure. If you told anyone across Europe, other than the UK and France, anywhere, Germany, Austria, Finland, Sweden, Holland, you name it, and you said, we have provinces in Canada and the national government where someone's ruling with a majority of the seats, even though a majority of the voters didn't want them. They would look at you and say, what kind of democracy do you have in Canada? Why do you even bother having elections if the outcome can be the exact opposite of what everyone asked for? It's a good question. And the answer is, we don't need to have a broken democracy, and we can fix it. So we often think about, during election time, who's running, what the platforms are, who's going to win, who I should vote for. And my message to you is take a step back and allow yourself the time to ask a way more important question, which is, how do we run our elections in the first place? And are there better ways we can do it? Because while we upgrade the operating systems on our phones every month, it seems, we haven't upgraded our democracy in Canada in 153 years, which is ludicrous. We're using the same system that has always been used, and there's nowhere else in our lives that we would tolerate such a impractical and nonsensical embracing of tradition just for the sake of tradition, because, hey, that's the way we've always done it. We're always trying to improve ourselves and our health and our families and our homes and our cities and our neighborhoods and our bicycles and whatever. It's like between self-help books and all these different fads and phases of people trying to make things better and, hacks. How do you hack this? How do you hack that? How do you do a makeover? There's all these TV shows of taking a kitchen or a house and renovating it and changing it. We're always trying to change stuff and experiment and try new things and try new foods and new recipes. And then with democracy, the most important thing in our lives, we're just oh yeah, that's the way we've done it for generations. Let's just keep doing it. It would be using VHS tapes just because, hey, that's what our parents had, so why don't we use that instead of, migrating to DVDs and then online videos. So I want to just run through really quick basics of what first past the post is and why it fails us in so many ways. And this is a short module. I'm trying to do this whole thing in 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. So I'm not going to get into the details of all the systems out there, but I'm going to try and give you a nutshell. And Google this stuff. There's so many fun YouTube videos out there. I've got some videos out there. If you Google my name and the word Lego or the word democracy quilt, you will find some fun videos that I've done. But let's just take a quick look at first past the post. So the basic rule of first past the post, as we all know, is whoever has the most votes wins. It's called a plurality. Whoever has the plurality wins. Doesn't have to be a majority. Doesn't have to meet any particular threshold. You just have to have the most votes. So in a two-candidate race, that actually works pretty well. So let's say we're having a vote on, we're going to have a new flag for Canada. We're getting rid of the maple leaf. It's old. It's boring. Lots of parts of the country don't even have maple trees, so why is that our flag? And the two main options in front of us are that it should be a pizza, because we all love pizza, vegan pizza, if you're vegan. And the other option is it should be a dog, because we all love dogs. I should have started this video by saying something about myself. I told you my name, Dave, but I'm a nonpartisan political organizer. I've spent the last few decades of my life. I'm 46 now. I got into activism in my teens, and essentially I build campaigns around issues I care about and set pragmatic goals and try and win legislative victories, federal, provincial, municipal, to leave the world a little bit better than I found it. And I should mention that I love animals a lot. I've been a vegetarian since I was 16, so 30 years. Wow, hard to believe for me that much time has passed. I have 2 cats. I love them. I try and snuggle them every day, but sometimes they don't want to, but I try anyways. And anyways, that's me. Back to the course. So let's say there's a vote, and 60% of the country are like, dog flag, 40% of the country are pizza flag. So in this case, dog has a plurality. They have the most votes. By the way, I didn't have a yellow marker. That's actually turmeric I used on the pizza. I hope you like it. It's incredible how many dyes and colors you can find in your kitchen when you're missing your pencil crayons and markers. Where was I? Oh, so, first past the post. Dog wins, amazing, Canada gets a dog flag. Cool. But, as we all know, elections aren't just 2 candidates. There can be 3, there can be 4, there can be 5. In fact, even though the media tends to focus on the Liberals, Conservatives, NDP, sometimes they'll talk about the Greens, we're all always surprised when you get to the voting booth and there's like 20 parties on there, including animal rights parties, vegetarian parties, every party you can imagine. There's a natural law party, there's a communist party, there's a whatever. So looking at a 2-candidate race isn't really the right analogy. So let's just add a 3rd candidate. Forget about 4, 5, 6, 7. We're just going to add a 3rd candidate and see what happens under the first past the post rule, which is whoever has the most votes wins. So what if there's 2 options under the dog umbrella? Labrador and poodle. So we're going to vote again. We still have 60% voting for dog, but it's been split. 35%, yes, I did draw these myself, but no, I didn't do it without the help of Google image search. Right? And trace it. They are freehand. 35 Labrador, 25 poodle, 40% pizza. Who has the most votes now? Who has the plurality? Well, it's pizza. We now have a pizza flag for a country that wanted a dog flag. That's kind of crazy. That's what we do in Canada. It doesn't make sense. It's not a good voting system. It's crazy. And you know what's funny? None of our political parties use that system to choose their own leaders or their own candidates in all of our 300 ridings. They use what's called a runoff vote. So a runoff vote is very simple. You look at this first round and you're like, okay, no one got a majority. You need a majority to win. If most people don't want you, pizza, then you can't win. So what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate, in this case, poodle. Poodle's off the ballot. And everyone can either vote a second time, or you use this really fun and easy and wonderful thing called a ranked ballot. You just rank your choices in order. And again, the Greens do this, the Liberals do it, the Conservatives do it, the NDP does it. Everyone does this to choose their own leader. So what you would do is if you were voting for this and you were a dog person, you might put Poodle first and Labrador second, or Labrador first and Poodle second. When we eliminate Poodle from the race, we just look at the second choice on those ballots and allocate them to their second choice, which will obviously be Labrador. Labrador wins, we get a Labrador flag. But there's even better voting systems called proportional representation, which you may have heard of, you may have not heard of. You may have heard myths about proportional representation, that it's some kind of crazy, obscure, complicated thing that they use in Italy and Israel. In reality, it's the most common. First of all, it's not a voting system, it's a family of voting systems. There's lots of ways to create proportional outcomes or semi-proportional outcomes. It's the most common way to do elections in the world. All it means is that the outcome of the election is proportional to what people asked for. So if you were electing a House of Commons under this system, you'd end up with a coalition of the Labradors and the Poodles. And of course, we'd end up with what's it called? Labradoodle flag. Although the coolest thing would be is if all these parties work together and we end up with the flag of a Labradoodle eating a slice of vegan pizza, which would be the most amazing flag I've ever seen, and I might have to try and draw it later. And we can try right now. No, I can't. Not enough time. I was going to fold it up into an origami and stick the pizza into the mouth. Proportional systems do a lot of things. First of all, they allow smaller parties to get a voice. So we have 300 seats in 300, I forget what it is now, 308. I think it's 338 now. Anyways, we have like over 300 seats in the House of Commons. So theoretically, if a party, has 1% of the vote in Canada, 1% support, they should probably win about 3 seats, right? If you have 10% support across Canada, why wouldn't you end up with about 30 seats, right? Yet we know, of course, that the Green Party can get 5 to 10% of the vote and win no seats, or maybe 1 or 2 seats. And what's even worse is that parties suffer from not just getting 5 or 10% of the vote and no seats, but that's on top of the strategic voting. So how many times have you wanted to vote for one party but said, well, they're not going to win the seat, so I'm going to strategically vote for someone else? Under a PR system, new parties can emerge. You could start a new party tomorrow, and no one will accuse you of splitting the vote or being a spoiler. So anyone can form a party. You vote with your heart. The outcome actually reflects what people asked for. You don't end up with these fake majorities. But also, you end up with more civility. Let's go back to this for a second. Labrador and Poodle under this race are going to hate each other because they both feel like the other one is splitting the dog vote. So they're going to attack each other. The Poodles are going to be like, Labradors suck, they're the worst dogs, don't vote for them. And Labrador is going to say, Poodles look kind of funny, which they kind of do. Under a proportional system, those parties will realize that they actually have a lot in common, and they're going to work together. One of the worst elements of first past the post is that it forces the most similar parties to hate each other. So the NDP and the Greens and the Liberals, kind of hate each other more than they hate the Conservatives, which is so weird because they have so much in common. And I have so many new Democrat friends who just despise the Greens. And that's really, maybe it speaks to their personality, but I think it really speaks to first past the post. It creates polarization, divisiveness, hostility. It encourages strategic voting. It pushes out new voices. And it gives us these crazy, distorted outcomes. All of that can be fixed. And other Westminster models, which means, Commonwealth countries that came out of British rule, like Canada, lots of them have ditched first past the post. Australia doesn't use it. New Zealand doesn't use it. In fact, New Zealand is such a great example of how first past the post leads to not just more fair outcomes, but leads to cooperation. So 2 elections ago in I think it was 2017, There was a coalition government with three parties working together. And then just last year in 2020, Labour actually won a majority of the seats. They didn't have to work with anyone. They were just in power. And they decided to work in not a formal coalition, but to work collaboratively with the Green Party just for fun, just because it feels nice to work together. And they gave the two co-leaders of the Green Party minister portfolios, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. So there's a real spirit of collaboration in the New Zealand Parliament, which we can't even imagine that happening here. Imagine, the NDP or the Liberals or the Conservatives winning a government as a majority, like Trudeau has, or Doug Ford has, or Jason Kenney has, and being like, we're going to form a coalition with another party just because, it's better to work together with other people. So anyways, there's so much we would gain from fighting for a better voting system. So I have a book out, Tear Down, Rebuilding Democracy from the Ground Up. It goes into detail about all the different systems we could be using, why we need to fight for those, and how to fight for them. Also check out my nonprofit, unlockdemocracy.ca, and check out groups like fairvote.ca, Lead Now, Dogwood Initiative in BC. All these groups are fighting for a better voting system. Before I wrap up, two more quick points. We could also, and we should also, be fighting for campaign finance reform. This is about how we get big money out of elections, how we reduce the voice of very wealthy lobbyist groups. So the beef industry, the dairy industry, the egg industry, they've been able to push for lots of helpful legislation, including controlling the entire food guide for decades until recently. Finally, the Canada's food guide actually says, maybe you should just eat more plants. And for decades, we know that there were these two massive food groups, dairy and, meat. And that wasn't because Canada's scientists thought that those were 50% of the major food groups. It's because lobbyists actively pushed for that. And that's the most visible impact of lobbyist groups on animal rights. But I can tell you that every day, in every province, there are active lobbyist groups fighting on behalf of the industry. And the problem is there isn't a level playing field because groups like Animal Justice will never have as much financial resources as industrial lobby groups. So there are mechanisms we can push for that level the playing field, especially during election time, to give equal voice to everyone. Again, details are in the book, details are online. I can't get into it right now. But other things too, like what about lowering the voting age to 16, which has already been happening all across the world. Brazil has done it. I think Argentina did it. Hungary did it. I think I forget but it's a wave that is happening. There's cities in the U.S. that have done it. Tacoma Park did it. Scotland did it for their last referendum. And the idea is that people develop political habits at a young age. And if they don't vote in their first election, they're less likely to vote as adults. And 18 is an age where you've already left high school, you might not be living at home, you can't go to the voting booth with your parents, you might be in a riding where you didn't grow up, so why would you care who the MP is? 16 is such a better age. You're in high school, you're taking civics, you can vote with your parents. There's even studies showing that it helps boost voter turnout for the parents because they feel pressured, either like, oh, my kid's old enough to vote now, I guess I should take them to the polling station, which makes them more likely to vote in the first place. Anyway, so many advantages. Of course, 16-year-olds are already allowed to, drive cars and join the military reserves and give sexual consent and get married, like all these huge decisions where we treat them like adults. They can pay income tax, right? So anyways, there are so many ways that we could reform our democracy, whether it's campaign finance reform, looking at who votes, and looking at how we vote and how parties work together in the legislature. So every time there's an election, don't just think about who's running and who's going to win. Think about whether we're doing this the right way. And if you find out that there's a better way that we could be running our democracy, fight for it, because these kinds of changes will never come from the top. Politicians who get elected under a certain model have no incentive to change that model. You have to change it. I have to change it. And we can do that working together. So again, thank you for being a part of Animal Justice Academy. Thank you for watching this module. Don't give up. There's been referendums on voting reform that we've lost in BC, in Ontario, in PI, but change is coming, change is happening, and it's going to happen because people like you watch videos like this and then get involved and fearlessly push for changes that we drastically and urgently need. Thank you so much. Have a great day.